Hey, I'm FriendlyBaron, and back in July of 2019, I made a video showing the newest strats in the GTA 5 speedrun, and this video is another addition to that, where I'll again be documenting all of the major changes to the Classic percent speedrun over the past few months. In the first mission Prologue, we normally just had to play like the casual did and walk up to the door. A few months ago, Strufo found that you could jump from behind cover of this box and get pushed by Michael, which allows you to hit the gate button and begin the shootout 2 seconds faster. Oddly, this was kind of unnoticed for a bit because it's hard to get, but it's picked up traction over the past few weeks as people realize there's no time loss for attempting it. Also oddly, you can't do the jump at all if you don't start from a new game. If you hit the restart mission at some point, you stay planted on the ground instead of jumping. In Repossession, the old method of getting into the garage was the jump on the driveway. This slowed down Franklin a while the garage door opened, and kept his speed up to then run inside right into Franklin's Buffalo. It's been known for a while that there were ways to teleport into the car though. In fact, on old console runs they would sometimes warp from inside the house into the car, at least partially due to low FPS. Viper recently found this consistent way to run slightly wide into the driveway then teleport into the car from the other side of the door. Basically, the game sees the doors open and allows you to hit the enter vehicle key, and it takes over pathing into the vehicle, but then Franklin hits the door and closes it right after. This confuses the game's pathfinding, and it eventually gives up and just teleports you inside. That only saves like half a second or so, but time save is time save. Later in the mission, in the shootout, the original method was to run forward after blowing up the tank. By getting next to the broken wall on the right, it would trigger the rest of the bad guys to spawn at once so they could be taken out and the player moves on. The new idea here is that by vaulting onto anything in the area, every enemy is spawned at once. This slows the runner down at first by having the vault, but having every enemy in means they can blow up the tank right away and take out the rest without delay. This ends up being a bit faster, skips some of Lamar's voice lines so he starts running with you quicker, and also is more consistent. So it saves at least 1.5 seconds, but could be more if the spawns were unlucky in the old strats. This had a multi-step process of being found. Maddie first found that by vaulting you can make everyone spawn in at once. Viper used that idea in his pacifist videos, which made the strat more widely known. Then, Unoriginal Guy had the idea that maybe spawning everyone at once could be faster, and finally Do posted a video of him doing the actual shootout with the vaulting that showed is indeed a viable method. Chop has had a similar progression of a new find by multiple people improving upon an idea. At first, the speedrun used to just run ahead of Lamar and wait for him to catch up, and open the door of the van for him. There was a very small chance of Lamar teleporting, dubbed the God Warp for a while, where in this footage he just teleports right into the van, which had a less than 1% chance of happening it seemed. Warlow played around with this and found you could do it more consistently by blowing up the van in front, and it pushed it into Lamar just a little bit. This was of course risky, and also the time it would take to get C4 this early on the run wasn't worth the time it saved anyways. The Real Brew played with this all the way back in 2017, and had found the proof of concept of using the car to interrupt Lamar's animations which would teleport him in. Viper took another look at this idea and tried using some of the junk around the map to block Lamar, which worked but was again inconsistent. All of the above was mostly discussed in April of 2019. Then, 4 months later in August, Do took another look at it and found a semi-consistent way of using a car to block Lamar at the back, which has him teleport in by sliding the car along the van, and parking it with just a small gap to let Lamar through, but block his full animations from playing. As of now, this is the preferred method and becoming more common as people practice. It doesn't work every time, and you do need to have a vehicle come on the road past you as calling a taxi or going back for Franklin's vehicle takes too long. It's a 6-second time save, so not huge, but nice. It only loses 1 or 2 seconds if you fail it, unless you get very unlucky and manage to fully soft-lock Lamar. In front requests, jumping off the freeway early on the right ends up being 2 to 3 seconds faster. Do again posted a video showing this, though as seen by Viper and Relow's replies here, it has been known for a while, just deemed too risky at first. But as the runners improve, this becomes a more worthy strat to attempt. As well, it's not as dangerous as it looks. As you approach, we can jump into the oncoming lanes, which seems more dangerous, but you have full view of the vehicles approaching and a handful of moments to make final adjustments to avoid hitting into something. Especially avoiding the light poles, it'd be very embarrassing if you hit a stationary object. Ace in the Jewel Store has had more optimizations by Do as well. First, instead of jumping off the building after taking the pictures of the vents, he found you can instead aim your weapon and then roll off. This saves like 1 second, but with practice it should be repeatable and worth doing. The reason you don't take more damage is that this area near the Jewel Store is a mission zone where slow walking is forced, and generally take less damage in those areas, similar to landing next to the Davy in Blimp Strat. Two notes on this. One, you have to make sure to put the gun away as you fall, otherwise an NPC spots you with it and fails the mission. There is a bit of a safety too. If you miss the roll, Michael usually lives still, just with really low health. That makes the next mission, Carbine Rifles, a bit scarier as you steal the police truck, but still possible to not lose too much time from. The drive after doing the scouting back has been improved as well. After jumping off the bridge, instead of staying on the left on the freeway, the speedrun can duck right into the tunnel and take a slightly more direct route back to Lester's warehouse. The traffic can be a bit random as you cross the roads, and if you're too slow the train will spawn in your way. I barely beat it here, but if done well it saves about 3 seconds on this drive. 2 missions later, we had this bug affecting almost every speedrunner during the jewel store heist. Watch the front bike here, he falls to the ground instead of driving onto the ramp. Then when the camera changes, the biker glitches out and falls out of the truck yet again. This extra time spent watching this guy fall into the Netherrealm would make the cutscene take 7 extra seconds, which was pretty annoying. It started happening again a few months ago when we switched from using sport bikes to going back to dirt bikes in this mission, because the dirt bike rider is faster at getting through stealing the actual jewels. Many people were giving ideas about how to fix the bug, and we tended to think it had something to do with how fast the bikes went or how you entered this tunnel. Does hitting the wall matter? Maybe you need to be on the ground when you hit land? Well, all of that was wrong. Luckily, Burhack found the fix. As he exits the store here, he waits for just a moment before going out. I'll play it again. Watch the bike in the back. It sets itself down after the backing out animation plays. Then Burhack exits the store. Like I mentioned earlier, we use the dirt bikes because it lets us finish the robbery quicker. But we were going so fast through the store that the animations of removing the bikes from the truck didn't finish, and that unfinished state would carry over to the next cutscene, making the guy fall through the floor. So we simply have to wait about 1 second now and this bug is avoided. Very weird trickle-down series of events, but pretty cool to find a fix for it. In Mr. Phillips, after the shootout you head to the trailer of Ortega to confront him. Usually the speedrun would drive left over the bridge and around the side to the house. The new idea is to go right and then jump the river, coming up behind the house. The trigger for this cutscene is basically anywhere near the house, so even if you approached it from the back, the game just puts Trevor on the other side. This saves like half a second, but still worth doing. I remember reading a post about this like 2 or 3 months ago, but I looked back so far in the Discord logs and I couldn't find your post, so whoever it was, feel free to comment or DM me elsewhere so I can credit you fully. I don't know if the post was deleted or what, but I just could not find the original suggestion for this strat. The next set of changes is a mission order change that Prologue came up with. Basically, at 2 hours and 20 minutes or so into the run, we have some missions that are best started as Trevor. These missions don't spawn in until certain text messages are received though, so this new mission order lets the player spend more time as Trevor between missions, so we've cleared out more of his text messages from the queue as we arrive to do mini-sub in the setup for Blitz play, which both of these sequences end with. So after Dead Man Walking, the speedrun now does a save warp to head to the yoga mission instead of exploding the car the Death Warp, the Threes Company. The missions themselves end up remaining the same, just the actions between them are different. Between Threes Company and scouting the port, the speedrun switches to Trevor, and we receive 4 text messages as Trevor while flying over and landing on this roof, clearing out his message queue a lot. You may have heard of the long waits before starting mini-sub. This is now consistently a bit shorter and also gives us a chance to get a gauntlet in the Franklin's garage. We'll cover why that's important later. And finally, when starting mini-sub after Hood Safari now, we can escape the cops on the jet ski then motor right on over to the sub. This isn't totally consistent, but I was able to crash myself right on top of the mini-sub this time. So the time saved basically comes from not having to wait for messages and ends up being about 20 to 40 seconds faster. Though this is still pretty new that I can't be certain, but it's more consistent overall in saving bits of time. In the assassination mission, we have some downtime while the timer clicks down to buy some weapons. One new thing that's being purchased is a silencer for Franklin's pistol. It's faster to shoot out a window than breaking into a car, so having a silencer on his pistol makes it slightly more likely we won't get the cops when shooting the gun. The next thing added to the shopping list is proximity mines. You can only get 5, but that's enough for the next strat to work. In Blitz play, we usually put down the sticky bombs as Franklin, then RPG the front cop cars as we get the rear cars with bombs. After that, you switch to Michael then go to clean up the back alley. The new shootout that Dew came up with is using proximity mines in the front to clear out the 3 cop cars, which then lets you immediately run to the back as Franklin and start shooting the rear spawns right away, as well as use Franklin's grenade launcher we bought in Assassination to take out the first chopper quicker, as Michael usually had to spend over 10 seconds shooting at the rotor. So the main time save comes from just getting through those initial waves faster with the proximity mines, and the shootout is mostly the same from there on out, except you use slightly different guns due to being on Franklin in the back. This overall saves about 3.5 seconds and is slowly being adopted. It's a big change for a rather small time save, but it's for sure an improvement. Similar to the route changes before where we wanted more text messages on Trevor, it's the opposite for a future mission. Normally after finishing Paleto score setup, Trevor pukes, then you can instantly switch the Franklin to begin the mission Predator. Relo found that if we instead switch the Michael here and wait for the text from Lester that begins military hardware, we can then start military hardware quicker as Trevor later. On average, it takes 3 text messages from Michael to get the mission spawn, so a 60-second wait since it's 20 seconds for each message. That seems like a longer wait, but it's better than the old method of waiting with Trevor, as it usually takes 5 messages to get the text with him as you sit here in the helicopter waiting, which takes 1 minute 40 seconds, while the speedrun that waited on Michael gets to leave right away when the mission ends. So on average, this will save about 40 seconds by waiting as Michael for the message instead of Trevor. In the Paleto score mission, Setback found that if you only kill one of the first 2 guards, the next 2 guards that would normally spawn at this corner and then at this table don't end up spawning, and you can continue into the next room as normal, which saves maybe 1 to 2 seconds. This is useful for anyone doing the shootout as Michael, hence I included it. However, as mentioned in the Risky Strat video, it's faster to do this fight as Franklin, which I am doing more often now, but you need to kill the early guy, otherwise he would just tear Franklin to shreds without armor. To start the mission Hang 10, the player kills themselves to warp over to the hospital, and upon loading in, would switch the Franklin as he's usually somewhere near the beach to do a hangout strat. However, like 1 in 5 times, Franklin would be farther north, so when doing the hangout strat, where you call another character on the phone to meet up, it would warp both characters to the North Vinewood area instead, 35 seconds away from where we wanted to be. Now we switch the Michael to do the hangout, and even though Michael is mostly on the west side of the city, it still gives the hangout location at the South Beach area. In my experience, about 1 in 10 times, so by simply switching which character is used, it has half the chance of getting a bad switch wasting time here. Once in Hang 10, Trevor has to drive Wade to the strip club, normally done by going through this parking lot and around the gas station. Massa Boy had the idea instead to jump straight up to the road above, which saves 5 or so seconds. He's also had ideas for much crazier jumps. We'll look into those in my next Risky Strat video soon. But the jump is simple enough, as long as you don't go too far left and smash into the rocks, causing you to usually fall into the tracks somewhere. Oddly, this strat doesn't work as well in an earlier mission, Repossession. Setback had the idea to do the jump with a motorcycle here much longer ago, but it didn't catch on as the side route you can take through the alleys shown on the left ends up being much faster on the motorcycle, partially due to the different ending locations and the ability to bounce over the roads easier on the bike. I'm using Burhack's footage here as he's much faster at this section than myself consistently, but doing the jump on the bike would lose 3 or so seconds instead of saving time like the car in Hang 10. Something the speedrun community has known about for a while is that by spamming weapon swapping you can run faster on foot. Dew posted this video back in April, but some people who speedrun the online heist have known about it for much longer. It works basically in any online race or certain missions, but we haven't found much use for it in the speedrun as you have to be in a combat stance for an extended period of time, and one of the few times that happens in the speedrun is in Bury the Hatchet while running away from these Chinese gangsters, where the run on the right is doing the weapon swapping by just tapping tab really fast, and they end up finishing the run almost a second faster. Very minor save, but something the runners are aware of and seeing where else it can be used over time. The biggest save this episode is the new gauntlet dupe. Let's quickly cover the old method. You would deliver one gauntlet, then go back to the garage where another one is saved instead of having to grab them off the street like a casual. Bringing this gauntlet back to the garage would open the door to the garage like a key, but you could then drive a different vehicle into the garage and push the gauntlet already in there into the wall. This blocks both doors and lets you trick the game's pathing into putting you into that gauntlet, letting you deliver that specific one a second time. Then you can go out and deliver the third gauntlet, and this was called duping a singular gauntlet. Now Relo has found a way where we can dupe the gauntlet twice, meaning we never have to leave the garage once arriving. This started with a post by Justice showing a way to dupe a gauntlet once inside a player garage, which Relo was able to theorize a way of doing the same thing of duping the gauntlet you had already tuned at the shop in exchange for one that had not been to Los Santos Customs. Though it had like a 1 in 100 chance of happening basically, due to needing a really lucky car on the road. However, 2 months later, he figured out a consistent way to make this happen, and here's how it works now. First, after setting up the final heist in the strip club, we switch to Franklin and bring up the phone, which blocks any text messages from coming in. Then go to Franklin's original house where a gauntlet is already saved. We'll talk about how it got there later. A hangout is started with Lamar. While on a hangout with another character, that character cannot send you messages, so this blocks Lamar sending us a text later on in the strat. The phone is kept up as we get the gauntlet because we absolutely do not want any texts. This strat relies on you not getting the text from Lester informing you that we need gauntlets for the setup of the heist. Since we don't get that text, we have to manually upgrade this gauntlet at the Los Santos Customs, which requires full brakes, fully upgraded engine, and the rock crawler off-road tires. Normally when doing this in the mission, there's a custom option which does all three at you for once, but outside of the mission you can still do it manually. Also a funny bug, this strat doesn't work if the gauntlet is one single color. This one here is okay since it's white and red, but if it had been all black for example, you have to change one of the primary or secondary colors. Once at the garage, now we want to start the mission so the phone is brought down, and the text from Lester that starts the gauntlet mission is received, usually first. However, it already let us inside, so once the game realizes that we are in and already manually upgraded, we can get out to deliver. This is the most important part Rillo found. After the mission pass screen, but before the phone call with Lester to confirm the delivery, you save the game and load it back in. Rillo told me his drive for finding this was that he really wanted to do both gauntlets, and was trying all sorts of stuff, and happened to try loading a save at the right moment. As the save loads, you are back in the gauntlet and get the confirmation call from Lester. But the gauntlet we delivered is already inside too, and that's the first dupe. Basically the game is in a state of delivering a gauntlet, but also we save so quickly the game doesn't realize we got out of it either. We use this duped gauntlet to open the door again, but then run inside. The first gauntlet is still unlocked, so we trick the game into delivering it yet again for our second dupe, and push the other gauntlet into the road so it's far enough away from the doors that they will close. Then it's simply a matter of getting into the third gauntlet after the mission pass screen again, and finally delivering it properly, though you can go between the final two cars in order to teleport out just a bit quicker. And that's the new double gauntlet dupe, which saved 90 seconds over having to go back to the Franklin garage and upgrade the cars first. However, we don't get all 90 seconds of that time save. Remember there was a gauntlet saved in Franklin's garage earlier. The gauntlet has to be saved anywhere else in the run, and usually takes 30 or so seconds to save. There's two main locations this happens. Usually at the start of the game during Repossession we can switch to one, or later during the wait for mini-sub in the new mission order section, we can grab a gauntlet as Trevor before the mission, then put it into the garage as Franklin during the mission. There's other spots too, but they aren't used as often as they would be later in the game. So it's very cool that sometimes we set up this mission by saving a gauntlet 20 minutes into the run, then don't use it again for another 5.5 hours. The gauntlet needs saved early, as most ways to get one during the actual gauntlet mission would either require driving around for probably more than 30 seconds hoping you find one randomly, or buying the garage and ordering one as Franklin, but that means you have a high chance of getting the mission from Lester while making the purchase. One more improvement to the run to note is that when beginning the shootout in the foundry in the final mission, we used to shoot these four guys as Franklin. Dio had the idea that RPG all four at once with the splash damage. It saves like 3 seconds, very straightforward. A correction from our previous video to make, we thought you couldn't save warp on consoles. Save warping being a way that you can teleport to a character's safe house by loading the swap button while loading. According to Commander Dick on Twitter, that's not right and is actually possible by using the D-pad to hold the switch character button and save warp on console, though the loading of the save and the warp itself takes about 10 to 15 seconds longer than on PC, but they seem actually possible nonetheless. For those that have seen my Casual vs Speedrun series, and if you haven't, consider giving it a watch, you might like it if you watch this whole video anyways. The speedrun originally had a time of 6 hours and 8 minutes, and the first strat update video brought that time down to 6 hours and 6 minutes. The total time saved from everything shown in this video is 2.5 minutes, which brings the speedrun time down to 6 hours, 4 minutes, and 3 seconds. That time is basically the time a human player would get if they played perfectly with perfect luck for the entire run, so we're closing in on that sub 6 hour time. And for reference, the real speedrun record is held right now by Burhack at 6 hours, 11 minutes, and 45 seconds, and I'm a minute behind him in second at 12 minutes and 56 seconds. We've got a lot of time to shave off those runs compared to the theoretical time from the strat video series, but the time is lowering slowly but surely. Thanks for watching, and please consider clicking the button to subscribe if you like my videos. Like, just consider it, okay? As well, if you like the video, YouTube has a button to indicate that as well. If you dislike the video, why did you watch it all the way to the end? Kinda weird, dude. no, 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 no. He better be armed. Which way did he turn? Where'd he go? No, he despawned. He escaped from me. No.